Hi, Kevin. Thanks for coming in today. I'm gonna interview you, get to know you a little better.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me in, Joe.
All right, so we're gonna jump right into the questions. A significant portion of this position is evaluating job positions. Can you tell me about a time you've had to evaluate a position in the past, and what are some factors you had to consider?
Yeah, sure. So in my current role as a human resources intern with Connecticut Water, I've been able to shadow my supervisor, human resources generalist, as she sort of evaluates positions. So after I had the opportunity to evaluate a few positions, she had me do one on my own, so kind of let me loose. So what I did to evaluate the position, it was for a new engineering position. I spoke with the hiring manager to learn as much as I could about the position, and then I checked I used that information to compare it against a sort of directory of like similar positions, so I could kind of get an idea of what grade it would be in. And then as far as factors I considered to kind of grade the position, I considered the cognitive requirements, the physical requirements to perform the position, the working conditions, and then responsibilities. So ultimately I was able to use that information from the hiring manager and the information from that sort of directory of similar jobs to kind of grade the position. Ultimately, I graded it at a grade that was a little too high, but I was able to kind of connect with my manager and learn what sort of line of questioning and what sort of things I could consider in the future. So I made the correct grading for next time.
That's great that you were able to learn from that. Tell me about a time that you've had to work with a lot of data to work with, and how you went about analyzing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, getting as my position as a HR intern, I've been set up with Google Analytics. So I don't know if you've had experience with Google Analytics, but it can be a lot of information. It can be very cumbersome if it's something that you're not used to. So something that I did was I looked at all the data, and first I kind of had a sort of conversation with the rest of the recruiting team to find out what sort of information we're trying to figure out, what sort of metrics we want to track. So ultimately, we decided that we wanted to check the bounce rate, which is the rate at which people enter the website and then leave right away, getting that number down. Also the audience workflow. So when people enter the site, we want to have a better understanding as to what sort of specific pages they visit on their session on the site. And then third of all would be the breakdown of like the users for PC versus mobile versus tablet, to see if we needed to make any improvements for the mobile page. For example, if we saw like a sort of like an uptick in usage for mobile users. So I guess to sort of reiterate, I focused on what metrics we were paying attention to, and then just focused on all the data that pertain to that. And we've been able to make some pretty significant improvements to our recruiting processes by improving some of our mobile site, for example. So that's just one way we've been able to kind of leverage that information as well.
All right. So this position also involves doing some training and development. Can you talk about a time you've developed a training program in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So one time in particular was actually during my training and development course I took last semester. We were tasked with developing a training intervention, and so to do that we conducted an organizational analysis, needs analysis, and person analysis. My sort of role in that was connecting the needs analysis to kind of, after we determined that the organization had the resources to provide that training intervention, I conducted a needs analysis to determine what the skills gap was, or what the disparity was between where the workers were and where they needed to be. And then we conducted a people analysis to make sure that the people had the requisite skills to receive the training. And I didn't state it before, but the training was to teach individuals how to improve their charting skills at a medical facility. And so the result was we sort of presented the training intervention in class and just kind of talked our way through it, and we did well.
All right, great. So have you had any experience conducting a training, either that one or something similar?
Yeah, so in regards to actually conducting the training, actually no, I want to talk about orientation stuff. So in my work as orientation student coordinator, I conducted training for the orientation peer assistants. I was kind of the lead for them, and one of the trainings I conducted was how to facilitate a small group for orientation. So small groups where they kind of do different activities and debrief after the activities. So the training really consisted of teaching them how to sort of facilitate the activities, things to remember, how to deal with any individuals who were disrupting the facilitation of the activity, and then how to debrief. And throughout this, I would go out and kind of check in with each of my individual OPAs just to see where they were, just to make sure that everybody understood, because I was aware that everybody might not necessarily kind of be on the same level, but just kind of ensuring that they were all sort of up to speed on things.
All right. So another thing you might have to do in this position is act as a liaison between conflicting parties, such as union and managers. Can you describe a time you've had to manage a situation like that in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my previous position as a forensic support specialist, I was part of the facility safety committee. I was a safety liaison for my work area, and one sort of project, or I guess one issue that was sort of brought to my attention by the employees was the fact that a patient had broke the windows on a certain unit, and the windows were replaced with glass that wasn't the certified security standard safety glass. And this was something that hadn't been rectified for a couple of weeks, so I sort of brought it to the attention of the safety committee, and they had heard it from other employees, but I think myself being on the committee and bringing awareness to the severity of it and making sure that it was something that we didn't want it to happen again, and just bringing to the attention the importance of it, really kind of went to explain, like, okay, so this is kind of an urgent issue that needs to be addressed. And on the same docket, I was able to look at it from the committee's perspective, and that, okay, so this is something that we understand, so, but it just kind of takes time to get that security grade safety glass. So I was able to sort of relay that information to the employees, so I was able to kind of work with both groups so they better understood each other. And we ended up getting the security grade safety glass.
All right, great. So another thing you're going to have to do in this position is explain to people what their benefits and compensation and whatnot actually is. So can you talk about a time you've had to explain somebody's benefits in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my current position as a recruiter, sometimes prospective employees, after they ask about the compensation and benefits for the position, they'll may have follow-up questions, like I'll send them a guide and they'll be like, what's this? What's a deductible, for example? And knowing that that's something that might be that might be like an easy question for somebody else, but just understanding that this individual might not have that sort of experience in there, so I just kind of stay cognizant of that and try to provided an answer that was really palatable for them, so I could make sure I could phrase it in a way that they could understand it. So I ended up telling this individual, okay, so the deductible is a certain amount you have to pay before your insurance, like your other insurance benefits will sort of kick in. So that's what that sort of means. So just being able to really break it down, not use too many words, and they ended up understanding.
Okay. So with this position, as we've kind of discussed, there's a lot of different tasks and information to keep track of. Can you describe how you've tracked and kept track when you've had a lot of tasks in the past?
Yeah, so that's something that even is occurring to me right now. My position as a recruiter, so I'm currently not only kind of managing the requisitions I'm working on our career side, but I'm also working with a few different temp agencies to kind of fill a few different temp roles. I'm also working on coordinating and scheduling things to make a trip out to Maine in a couple of weeks here, and I'm also still working on the day in the life sort of project where I've been interviewing different employees and videoing them, and I've just that's another project I've been working on. So what I've been doing to organize that is I prioritize, think of what's most important. So I think of which requisitions have been open the longest, which ones are the most critical to fill, and I work on those ones first. Other than that, I kind of work with the temp agencies as well, as those are critical positions that we're trying to fill. And then on the back burner, some of the longer form sort of projects I'm working on, like the Day in the Life project and another internship program I'm developing. Those are kind of on the back burner. So just kind of prioritizing tasks as to like what's the most time sensitive.
Okay. So can you discuss a time when you maybe made a mistake or a poor analysis and how you handled dealing with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So aside from the job evaluation I mentioned before, I'd say one thing I did was in my recruiting, experience, I brought in a candidate who, two things. He didn't have the appropriate sort of qualifications for the position. He didn't have experience in CIS. It was for a customer service specialist position. He didn't have any experience in CIS, and he lived he lived like an hour and a half away. So it was something where I invited him in for an interview and everything, and like the day or two before the interview, I kind of found out that he found out how far away it was, and it was something I should have caught before. And even if that were the case, it was something where I should have caught the fact that he didn't have the appropriate sort of qualifications. So it just made me learn that, okay, so I kind of missed a few things that I should have caught during the screening process. If he wasn't qualified, he lived way too far away for it to be practical, and I learned to be more attentive to detail about when it comes to screening candidates, not just making sure they kind of sound good on the phone, but making sure they have all the good experience and their address is somewhere in the vicinity.
All right, great. So sometimes in these types of positions, you'll have to deal with personnel situations that are kind of challenging and could lead to legal issues. Can you describe kind of time you've had to deal with that in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, in my current position as an HR intern, sometimes during interviews, I am often with other individuals, sometimes hiring managers in the positions. One time in particular, a hiring manager asked an illegal question, and when that happened, I kind of stopped this individual. I said, that's not something we ask here, so just if I can kind of redirect your question. It was a question that's, in a sense, could elicit age information. So I kind of redirected the question and asked more about their experience, and just said that's, again, I just said to the manager, it's not something I asked here, but I said we could kind of talk about your experience in this sort of field and how they kind of fit the qualifications for the role. And then after the interview, I followed up and said, okay, so this is the reason why you couldn't ask that question. So just for future reference. And nothing ended up coming with it because the candidate was very understanding, thankfully.
That's great. So with all the roles you fulfill here, there's a lot of technology and software that you have to use. Can you explain a time where you've had to learn software recently and how you went about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cornerstone, or talent and learning management system, has been something. It's a very robust system. Handles all of our several different modules: recruiting, performance management, compensation. So really what I did is I worked in a sort of a stage environment, which is something where you can just kind of, like a practice environment where you can just kind of try things out and mess around. So I just did that. I just kind of like worked with things, just tried to get very hands-on as possible. Just tried to give my things to do and say, okay, how would I do that? If I wanted to generate a report of this, how would I do that? So just got myself a lot of exposure to the system. And then I've been able to really get familiarized with it in that way.
Okay, well that's all questions I have for you. Do you have any questions you'd like to make?
No questions at this time, because I'm pretty sure I'm pretty over.
All right, great. Well, we'll let you know if you're being considered to move further in the process.
Thank you.
Does the button press? I'm pressing